Shalom. I want to start by giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Makar Kodash. Double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Salutation to the hopeful elect that is pushing this word in the four corners of highways and byways. Once again, all praises, glory, and honor is due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Makar Kodash. Alright, this is Brother Zakaria here with another lesson. Alright, and this lesson gonna be based on something that the CDC posted a while back. Alright, which is basically a guide on how to be prepared for a nuclear war. And off rip, let me say this. You never could be truly prepared for, no human being could truly be prepared for a nuclear war. Alright? Because a nuclear war is gonna change the entire landscape of this earth. With the level of radiation and stuff that is gonna happen, it's gonna change the entire landscape, and living as we know it. Alright? That's why we, the men of GMS, we always stress that you're gonna need superpowers in order to survive this upcoming, war. You need superpower to survive what's coming. Alright? Right. And without the superpowers is basically, no surviving. Right? You're gonna need spiritual power. Hey, you can't wait it out in a bunker. Alright? You can't be living like Mad Max trilogy. These things are Esau fantasies. Alright? That you take the scripture and put a spin on it, and then put it in the movies. Right? But unfortunately, in the real world, you cannot put a spin on things like that. You don't get to do that. Only the Most I get to do that, because this is his movie, right? Been rambling a little bit, but let's get into this article, right? It says nuclear explosion and radiation emergencies. The following guideline is based on research from the Centers for Disease Control and Federal Emergency Management Association. So CDC and FEMA. Alright? This is their guidelines basically for a nuclear war. Now with them posting something like this in 2025, alright? Most of the articles that I saw on it is from 2025 and 2026. A few in 2024 as well. They let you know that, hey, these people fully expecting a nuclear war sometime soon. Right? It says here, nuclear explosion. An explosion with intense light and heat, a damaging pressure wave, and widespread dispersion of radioactive material that can contaminate the air, water, and ground surface for miles around. Alright? Right, so you imagine if the entire world was engulfed in a nuclear battle. All the air is gonna be polluted, the ground is gonna be polluted. Alright? The waterways is gonna be contaminated. Life as we know it, just is not going to be able to be sustained anymore, right? So the real guide to surviving or preparing for a nuclear explosion is these scriptures. All right. In fact, let me get a precept on that. You know, this is the real guide, right? What is right? This is Isaiah 33 and verse 6. It says, "Wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times, and the strength of thy salvation. The fear of Yahweh is his treasure." Right, so wisdom and knowledge is going to be, our stability in this time, right? And strength of our salvation, right? So ultimately, wisdom and knowledge is what is going to save us in this time, right? Hey, it is not going to be, you got to survive a backpack, right? And you pack it with this and that, and your radioactive mask and all this bullshit, your hazmat suit, right? You ain't gonna fucking survive out here with like that, cause the first thing when another human see you, they're gonna beat you up and take everything that you have, alright? Even if they have more than you, they're just gonna take what you have, right? Hey, there's no preparing for this nuclear war if there's a 2/3, all right? Like I said, only this scripture could save you, once you're part of the elect, right? This book, the Bible, is the only guide to safety, in that time, right? Let me get something else. It's 64. Right. Second Esdras chapter 16 and verse. I read from verse 75. Read from verse 74. It says, read from verse 70. From verse 72. It says, "For they shall waste and take away their goods, and cast them out of their houses." Alright? And this is basically gonna be on a large scale. Alright? People is gonna come against the elect. People is gonna come against one another. Alright, nation against nation, alright, kingdom against kingdom. There's going to be chaos, alright, in this upcoming war, right? It says, then shall it be known who are my chosen, and they shall be tried as gold in a fire. Verse 74. Hear, O my beloved, said Yahweh, behold, the days of trouble are at hand. Alright? Yeah, the days of trouble, the days of, World War III, the days of nuclear war, which the scripture talks about nuclear war, don't get it twisted. Scripture clearly details a nuclear war, a war that is born with, with fuel of fire. All right. If you have spiritual eyes, you will see it. That is talking about a nuclear war, right? Now, continuing, it says, "Hear, O ye my beloved, said Yahweh, behold, the days are at hand, the days of trouble are at hand, but I will deliver you from the same." All right, right. So, first it shall be known who is my chosen, and then Yahweh is going to deliver. Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai is going to deliver his chosen from the sin, and that is the only. That's the only true, readiness or preparedness for this nuclear war that is coming. All right. Verse 75, it says, "Be ye not afraid, neither doubt, for Yahweh Hashem Yahushai is your guide, and the guide to them who keep his commandments and precepts," said Yahweh power. Yeah. Ultimately he's gonna guide us, he's gonna give us spiritual power. He's gonna tell us what to do in the coming time, not the CDC. Because the CDC can't even save themselves. They're gonna be thinking they're gonna be all good in a bunker, alright, with enough they're gonna be thinking that they're good in a bunker with enough ration to last them 100 years or 200 years or whatever. But even though wouldn't be enough. Alright? And the ones that do live up to a certain point, the elect is just gonna go and collect them out of these bunkers. Alright? And carry them into slavery. Right, so hey, this is the only guide that you need to nuclear war preparedness. All right, this is the only guide that you need. Get back to this precept here. Back here the article. Yeah, it says nuclear explosion. A nuclear explosion with intense light and heat, a damaging pressure wave, and widespread dispersion of radioactive materials that can contaminate air, water, and ground surfaces for miles around. A nuclear device can range from large weapon and can carry carried by a small missile to small portable nuclear device transported by an individual. All right. Oh no, let's read the back. Right, it says nuclear explosion, an explosion with intense light and heat, damaging pressure wave, and widespread dispersion of radioactive material. Let's see what the scriptures say about that, right? And this is Zechariah 14:12. It says, And it shall be the plague, Salakia, and this shall be the plague wherewith the Yahweh will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. All right, and this is talking about literally, from the nuclear explosion. All right, let me read the back. Right, let's read it back together. Actually, right, let's read it back together. It says nuclear explosion, an explosion with intense light and heat, a damaging pressure wave. Right, so the intense light and heat is actually enough to evaporate certain materials, right? Even human flesh, right? It says a damaging pressure wave, right? Yeah, because even the blast from a nuke, just the let's say the sound wave, is enough to kill somebody, right? A damaging pressure wave and a widespread dispersion of radioactive materials that can contaminate the air, water, and the ground surfaces, right? Yeah, so when a nuke go off, if you standing close enough to it, it's going to literally melt your flesh away, like we just read in thing, right? Like we just read in Zechariah, right? So again, if you believe it, if you could see it, nuclear war is in the scriptures, right? Second Peter is also a good precept. Second Peter 2 and 12, around 12. Talks about the elements shall melt it with fervent heat. Let me see. Yeah, so it's like 3 verse 10, right? 2 Peter 3 and verse 10, it says, but the day of Yahweh will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise. Right? And the heaven is talking about, Esau heaven. Right? Because Esau, the so-called, cracker race, they're in their heaven right now. Alright? And the elements shall melt with fervent heat, and the earth also, and the works that are therein shall be burnt up. All right, so this earth is literally gonna burn. Not the entire earth, but due to the nuclear war that is coming, a lot of the infrastructure, all right, is gonna be burned. You could say most of it, right? And some human flesh is going to be caught up in that too, right? Let me read the back. It says, but The day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Right? Yeah, the great noise is what? An explosion. And then the radioactive heat, that is going to cook everything. So, hey, a nuclear war is definitely in the scriptures, right? Definitely something you got to be on the lookout for, right? Right, so let's see, what is CDC guide to survive a nuclear fallout. Tip 1, it says, the more distance between you and the fallout particles, the better. And underground areas such as an home or office building basement offers more protection from the first floor of a building. Right? Tip 2, shielding. The heavy and denser the material, thick walls, concrete, bricks, books, and earth between you and the fallout particles, the better. Right? Yeah, and this is what, going into bunkers now. Alright? Because by this definition that they give, a bunker would be the most, suitable place, somewhere on the ground. Alright? Big with, metals and earth between you and the nuclear particles. Right? But what the most I say? We can drag them from out of the cleft of the rocks. Right? So the part is really for the elite of Esau. Alright? They're gonna have the little bunkers and whatever. Right? But they're gonna be dragged out of there by the elect to be the first batch of slaves. Right? Right. Tip number 3 says, fallout radiation loses its intensity fairly rapidly. In time, you will be able to leave the fallout shelter. Radioactive fallout poses the greatest threat to people during the first 2 weeks, but by which time it has declined to about 1% of its initial radiation level. Right, so they're saying, basically, let's get a bunker and let's wait it out. Alright? But hey, it's not so. Alright? It's not so. Right? The Most High, you're gonna literally need spiritual power in order to survive this upcoming nuclear war. Alright? Let me get this here. Second address. I think it's 9 and 47. Second Ezra chapter 9 and 47, it says, and everyone that shall be saved and shall be able to escape by his works and by his faith, wherein ye have believed. Alright, so yeah, the only set of persons is going to make it out of that time is the elect. Alright, and what it say, they shall escape by their works and by the faith wherein they believe. Right? One of the things we believe in is spiritual power, you know, aka superpowers. Alright? And that's the only way we're gonna make it out of this place. Yeah. You know, not everybody has a bunker and a year full of supplies so for wait out, you know, any radioactive fallout. Alright? Which it will happen, you know. I got one more precept, you know, to prove that, right? To really right. This is Isaiah 9 verse 5. It says, "For every battle of the warrior is with a confused noise and garments rolled in blood." You know, because even up to World War II, World War One, all right, all those civil wars that we had since then, it's always been a battle of confused noise, all right, meaning men running and screaming, and you know, swords, you know, battle cries, all right, you know, all right, you know, blood being spilled upon garments, you know, the sound of machine guns, right, you know, grenades blown, you know, going off, all right, you know, every battle, you know, of the Salaki, let me read it back. Isaiah 9 verse 5, "For every battle of the warrior is with a confused noise and garments rolling blood, but this shall be with burning and fuel of fire." All right, you know, now you think about a war with burning and fuel of fire, you know, and let me know what you see. Close your eye and picture it and let me know what you see. You know, if you don't see a nuclear war, then the Most High ain't dealing with you, you know, right? Yeah, and like I said, well, not like I said, like the scripture said, the only way to survive this, you know, is by having these precepts, you know, written in your inward parts, all right? You know, so with that, hopefully this lesson was edifying through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Akakadash. Double honors to the apostle and elders of Great Millstone. Salutation to the hopefully elect. I say shalom.